Nadine here. Um, how's everybody doing today? I'm doing good. I'm just playing with Blender here. I'm trying to find the book that I get scheduled for today. It's in the list. It's in the list. Oh, there it is. Haha. It's another Lewis Carroll one. And let's see. Let's see what it says. I'm buffering. Why am I buffering for? Do 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 do. Maybe it's all the videos I got tabbed up in my other window. Let's see. Close that, close that, close that. Maybe that'll help. And I need to save this. Watch later. Save this. Watch later. I am trying to. I was trying to figure out how to make snowmen dance or whatever dance. And I finally found it, and apparently I wasn't putting in the correct search terms and all that kind of fun stuff. So, you know, so yeah, there we go. Okay, all that's done. All that's out of the way. Where's the other one? Aha. Okay. Am I even streaming? Like, it's just plain buffering. It says my stream's going out. I've got no dropped frames. But it says it's. Is there anybody out there? Is there anyone home? Come on, come on. Okay, there we go. How about chat? Now stuff's not being grumpy. I can get somewhere with that. I could definitely get somewhere with that. Let's see. A ticker text. Now today, Josiah asked for Phantasmagoria by Lewis Carroll. So we'll probably play that one, and I think the Empty House and Phantasmagoria will be good. Let's see. Where am I? Okay, there's where I am. Okay, we play books for the book. Okay, we found it. And it's not that one. It's going to be one of these. The Empty House. By Algernon Blackwood and Lewis Carroll. And this is the book that we're doing. Yay, okay. It's from The Empty House by and The Empty House by Algernon Blackwood. Save it. Yay. Okay. Sorry, I'm not really sort of Simmons Institute. Ooh. What's the Simmons Institute? Hi, Brian. Yay. Just having some minor technical difficulties. Difficulties as usual. Open link in new tab and open link in new tab. I gotta share this out yet. Oh, I'm a little bit behind. I had helped my mom, and so that took me a few minutes. And but I'm trying to figure out how to make stuff move to music, and I think I found a tutorial on it. Oh, I forgot to share that with myself. Um, let's see, creations. Usually I tag myself, and then I can easily find it and share it out. Did you see, Brian? Did you see Aaron Raw there the other night with the gentleman that was on with Aaron Raw? That was TW Audio Book Club. There. I think you're in my list too, Brian. Tweet. Oh, I saw the video with his crocoduck, but did you see the debate on non-sec? If you haven't, it was last night on non-sec. There's a debate. Oh, my face is broken. Ah, he's one of your fizzy buds? Nice. Gotta like those fizzies. I got, okay, close that, because I don't need to look at my Twitter while I'm doing this, do I? Because I'm going to be playing. Oh, no. So, yep, if you, well, you could probably watch 5 minutes and know how the whole thing went, so it won't take long if you were to watch it. It's pretty funny. It makes your brain hurt. Oops, pause. Ooh, Mindscape. Ooh, what's Mindscape? Is it a show? Is it a movie? Is it a... I need a tissue. I got an issue. Sorry about that. I got a tissue. It's an issue with my tissue. My nose is dribbly. Mindscape. Oh, it's a video game? Ooh. I'm guessing it's not the movie. Ooh, cool. Maybe share one to my personal tweet Twitter. I'll have a look. All I'm finding is the movies in the video game developer. Yes, I'm fine. Hi, flustered, rested. How you doing? Hey, oh. Oh, pause. Oh, okay, I paused it already. Haha. I'm just only a little bit disheveled here and trying to figure out what's going on. I don't know what's happening. If anybody, oh, and if anybody has a book, remember, uh, if anybody has a book they want me to play, just let me know. Let's see. CBN book request. Nope. Driving to the barn. Awesome. Is the horses being good today? Let's see. CBN okay. Of course. I have a macro program um, that I use to type in stuff that I'm going to be typing frequently. So frustrated. If you have a book request anytime, I play on Thursdays. Right now we're doing um Phantasmagoria by Lewis Carroll, and then I'm gonna play The Empty House, I guess. There's The Empty House, The Judge's House, Man Sized in Marble, Laura, Chuckin' the Painter, Shadow on the Wall, Tales of Treasure, The Trail for Murder, and Uncle Abraham's Romance. It's all ghost story collection. Woo! I should get my mom to come in and play Laura. That'd be funny. Not that I'd want her to be a ghost. Save it. Exit that. Save it. Um. Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the book. Let's see. Um. Oh, I need to twiter it to. I need to twiter to Joe. Saya. Uh. Let's see. Why is it so difficult? My color's a little bit off, isn't it? Oh, oops. Let's 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 hear me share to a direct message to my honey. And there. Okay. There. All that's done. Yay. Yay. Okay. So let's get this party started. Anything Agatha Christie. I'm Brian. I'm doing the requests from LibriVox because they're all public domain books. Agatha Christie isn't. I would love to be able to play her stuff. Um, but her stuff's not blah 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 blah. It's not public domain, so I'm sticking with LibriVox. It's all public domain stuff that people have read. Um, if you can find me there's something that's public domain, I'll play it. That's pretty much the only caveat I have is it needs to be public domain because I don't want the channel to get into trouble for whatever silly reason. You know how it is. Excuse me. But yeah, I love Agatha Christie, and I would love to be able to play some Anne Rice stuff or Anne McCaffrey, the Crystal Singer series or Crystal Song. Love to be able to do that. I don't know how I could. I don't think I could. Yeah, you never seem to listen very long at all. And I haven't even started. You've been here probably the longest is today for a little while anyway. But okay, I'm guessing my honey who requested the book is busy, so I'm going to play the other one first, and then play the book he requested, which was the Josiah requested Phantasmagoria. So I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna play the other one first, and then Phantasmagoria. Whoa. So let's see. Mute. Wrong window. Why is it always the wrong window? It's always the wrong window. So mute myself.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read and recorded by William Kuhn. July 2006. The Empty House by Algernon Blackwood. Certain houses, like certain persons, manage somehow to proclaim at once their character for evil. In the case of the latter, no particular feature need betray them. They may boast an open countenance and an ingenuous smile, and yet a little of their company leaves the unalterable conviction that there is something radically amiss with their being, that they are evil. Willy-nilly they seem to communicate an atmosphere of secret and wicked thoughts, which makes those in their immediate neighborhood shrink from them as from a thing diseased. And perhaps with houses the same principle is operative, and it is the aroma of evil deeds committed under a particular roof, long after the actual doers have passed away, that makes the goose-flesh come and the hair rise. Something of the original passion of the evildoer, and of the horror felt by his victim, enters the heart of the innocent watcher, and he becomes suddenly conscious of tingling nerves, creeping skin, and a chilling of the blood. He is terror-stricken without apparent cause. There was manifestly nothing in the external appearance of this particular house to bear out the tales of the horror that was said to reign within. It was neither lonely nor unkempt. It stood crowded into a corner of the square, and looked exactly like the other houses on either side of it. It had the same number of windows as its neighbors, the same balcony overlooking the gardens, the same white steps leading up to the heavy black front door, and in the rear there was the same narrow strip of green, with neat box borders running up to the wall that divided it from the backs of the adjoining houses. Apparently, too, the number of chimney pots on the roof was the same, the breadth and angle of the eaves, and even the height of the dirty area railings. And yet this house in the square, that seemed precisely similar to its 50 ugly neighbors, was as a matter of fact entirely different, horribly different. Wherein lay this marked invisible difference is impossible to say. It cannot be ascribed wholly to the imagination, because persons who had spent some time in the house, knowing nothing of the facts, had declared positively that certain rooms were so disagreeable that they would rather die than enter them again, and that the atmosphere of the whole house produced in them symptoms of a genuine terror, while the series of innocent tenants who had tried to live in it and been forced to decamp at the shortest possible notice was indeed little less than a scandal in the town. When Shorthouse arrived to pay a week-end visit to his Aunt Julia in her little house on the sea-front at the other end of the town, he found her charged to the brim with mystery and excitement. He had only received her telegram that morning, and he had come anticipating boredom. But the moment he touched her hand and kissed her apple-skin wrinkled cheek, he caught the first wave of her electric condition. The impression deepened when he learned that there were to be no other visitors, and that he had been telegraphed for with a very special object. Something was in the wind, and the something would doubtless bear fruit, for this elderly spinster aunt, with a mania for psychical research, had brains as well as will-power, and by hook or by crook she usually managed to accomplish her ends. The revelation was made soon after tea, when she sidled close up to him as they paced slowly along the sea-front in the dusk. "I've got the keys," she announced in a delighted yet half-awesome voice. "Got them till Monday." "The keys of the bathing machine, or?" he asked innocently, looking from the sea to the town. Nothing brought her so quickly to the point as feigning stupidity. "Neither," she whispered. "I've got the keys of the haunted house in the square, and I'm going there tonight." Shorthouse was conscious of the slightest possible tremor down his back. He dropped his teasing tone. Something in her voice and manner thrilled him. She was in earnest. "But you can't go alone," he began. "That's why I wired for you," she said with decision. He turned to look at her. The ugly, lined, enigmatical face was alive with excitement. There was the glow of genuine enthusiasm round it like a halo. The eyes shone. He caught another wave of her excitement, and a second tremor, more marked than the first, accompanied it. "Thanks, Aunt Julia," he said politely. "Thanks awfully." "I should not dare to go quite alone," she went on, raising her voice, "but with you I should enjoy it immensely. You're afraid of nothing, I know." "Thanks so much," he began again. Is anything likely to happen?" "A great deal has happened," she whispered, "though it's been most cleverly hushed up. 3 tenants have come and gone in the last few months, and the house is said to be empty for good now." In spite of himself, Shorthouse became interested. His aunt was so very much in earnest. "The house is very old indeed," she went on, "and the story, an unpleasant one, dates a long way back. It has to do with a murder committed by a jealous stableman who had some affair with a servant in the house. One night he managed to secrete himself in the cellar, and when everyone was asleep he crept upstairs to the servants' quarters, chased the girl down to the next landing, and before anyone could come to the rescue, threw her bodily over the banisters into the hall below." "And the stableman?" "Was caught, I believe, and hanged for murder, but it all happened a century ago, and I've not been able to get more details of the story." Shorthouse now felt his interest thoroughly aroused, but though he was not particularly nervous for himself, he hesitated a little on his aunt's account. "On one condition," he said at length. "Nothing will prevent my going," she said firmly, "but I may as well hear your condition." "That you guarantee your power of self-control if anything really horrible happens. I mean, that you are sure you won't get too frightened." "Jim," she said scornfully, "I'm not young, I know, nor are my nerves, but with you I should be afraid of nothing in the world." This, of course, settled it. Shorthouse had no pretensions to being other than a very ordinary young man, and an appeal to his vanity was irresistible. He agreed to go. Instinctively, by a sort of subconscious preparation, he kept himself and his forces well in hand the whole evening, compelling an accumulative reserve of control by that nameless inward process of gradually putting all the emotions away and turning the key upon them, a process difficult to describe, but wonderfully effective, as all men who have lived through severe trials of the inner man well understand. Later it stood him in good stead. But it was not until 10:30, when they stood in the hall, well in the glare of friendly lamps, and still surrounded by comforting human influences, that he had to make the first call upon this store of collected strength. For, once the door was closed, and he saw the deserted silent street stretching away white in the moonlight before them, it came to him clearly that the real test that night would be in dealing with 2 fears instead of one. He would have to carry his aunt's fear as well as his own, and as he glanced down at her sphinx-like countenance, and realized that it might assume no pleasant aspect in a rush of real terror, he felt satisfied with only one thing in the whole adventure, that he had confidence in his own will and power to stand against any shock that might come. Slowly they walked along the empty streets of the town. A bright autumn moon silvered the roofs, casting deep shadows. There was no breath of wind, and the trees in the formal gardens by the seafront watched them silently as they passed along. To his aunt's occasional remarks Shorthouse made no reply, realizing that she was simply surrounding herself with mental buffers, saying ordinary things to prevent herself thinking of extraordinary things. Few windows showed lights, and from scarcely a single chimney came smoke or sparks. Shorthouse had already begun to notice everything, even the smallest details. Presently they stopped at the street corner and looked up at the name on the side of the house full in the moonlight, and with one accord, but without remark, turned into the square and crossed over to the side of it that lay in shadow. "The number of the house is 13, whispered a voice at his side, and neither of them made the obvious reference, but passed across the broad sheet of moonlight and began to march up the pavement in silence. It was about halfway up the square that Shorthouse felt an arm slipped quietly but significantly into his own, and knew that their adventure had begun in earnest, and that his companion was already yielding imperceptibly to the influences against them. She needed support. A few minutes later they stopped before a tall, narrow house that rose before them into the night, ugly in shape and painted a dingy white. Shutterless windows without blinds stared down upon them, shining here and there in the moonlight. There were weather streaks in the wall and cracks in the paint, and the balcony bulged out from the first floor a little unnaturally. But beyond this generally forlorn appearance of an unoccupied house, there was nothing at first sight to single out this particular mansion for the evil character it had most certainly acquired. Taking a look over their shoulders to make sure they had not been followed, they went boldly up the steps and stood against the huge black door that fronted them forbiddingly. But the first wave of nervousness was now upon them, and Shorthouse fumbled a long time with the key before he could fit it into the lock at all. For a moment, if truth were told, they both hoped it would not open, for they were a prey to various unpleasant emotions as they stood there on the threshold of their ghostly adventure. Shorthouse, shuffling with the key and hampered by the steady weight on his arm, certainly felt the solemnity of the moment. It was as if the whole world, for all experience seemed at that instant concentrated in his own consciousness, were listening to the grating noise of that key. A stray puff of wind wandering down the empty street woke a momentary rustling in the trees behind them, but otherwise this rattling of the key was the only sound audible. And at last it turned in the lock, and the heavy door swung open and revealed a yawning gulf of darkness beyond. With a last glance at the moonlit square, they passed quickly in, and the door slammed behind them with a roar that echoed prodigiously through empty halls and passages. But instantly, with the echoes, another sound made itself heard, and Aunt Julia leaned suddenly so heavily upon him that he had to take a step backwards to save himself from falling. A man had coughed close beside them, so close that it seemed they must have been actually by his side in the darkness. With the possibility of practical jokes in mind, Shorthouse at once swung his heavy stick in the direction of the sound, but it met nothing more solid than air. He heard his aunt give a little gasp beside him. "There's someone here," she whispered. "I heard him." "Be quiet," he said sternly. "It was nothing but the noise of the front door." "Oh, get a light, quick," she added, as her nephew, fumbling with a box of matches, opened it upside down and let them all fall with a rattle onto the stone floor. The sound, however, was not repeated, and there was no evidence of retreating footsteps. In another minute they had a candle burning, using an empty end of a cigar case as a holder, and when the first flare had died down he held the impromptu lamp aloft and surveyed the scene. And it was dreary enough in all conscience, for there is nothing more desolate in all the abodes of men than an unfurnished house dimly lit, silent, and forsaken, and yet tenanted by rumor with the memories of evil and violent histories. They were standing in a wide hallway. On their left was the open door of a spacious dining room, and in front the hall ran, ever narrowing into a long, dark passage that led apparently to the top of the kitchen stairs. The broad, uncarpeted staircase rose in a sweep before them, everywhere draped in shadows, except for a single spot about halfway up, where the moonlight came in through the window and fell on a bright patch on the boards. This shaft of light shed a faint radiance above and below it, lending to the objects within its reach a misty outline that was infinitely more suggestive and ghostly than complete darkness. Filtered moonlight always seems to paint faces on the surrounding gloom, and as Shorthouse peered up into the well of darkness and thought of the countless empty rooms and passages in the upper part of the old house, he caught himself longing again for the safety of the moonlit square, or the cozy, bright drawing-room they had left an hour before. Then, realizing that these thoughts were dangerous, he thrust them away again and summoned all his energy for concentration on the present. "Aunt Julia," he said aloud, severely, "we must now go through the house from top to bottom and make a thorough search." The echoes of his voice died away slowly all over the building, and in the intense silence that followed he turned to look at her. In the candlelight he saw that her face was already ghastly pale, but she dropped his arm for a moment and said in a whisper, stepping close in front of him, "I agree. We must be sure there's no one hiding. That's the first thing." She spoke with evident effort, and he looked at her with admiration. "You feel quite sure of yourself? It's not too late." "I think so," she whispered, her eyes shifting nervously toward the shadows behind. "Quite sure. Only one thing." "What's that?" "You must never leave me alone for an instant." "As long as you understand that any sound or appearance must be investigated at once, for to hesitate means to admit fear. That is fatal." "Agreed," she said, a little shakily, after a moment's hesitation. "I'll try." Arm in arm, Shorthouse holding the dripping candle and the stick, while his aunt carried the cloak over her shoulders, figures of utter comedy to all but themselves, they began a systematic search. Stealthily, walking on tiptoe and shading the candle lest it should betray their presence through the shutterless windows, they went first into the big dining room. There was not a stick of furniture to be seen. Bare walls, ugly mantelpieces, and empty grates stared at them. Everything, they felt, resented their intrusion, watching them, as it were, with veiled eyes. Whispers followed them. Shadows flitted noiselessly to right and left. Something seemed ever at their back, watching, waiting an opportunity to do them injury. There was the inevitable sense that operations which went on when the room was empty had been temporarily suspended till they were well out of the way again. The whole dark interior of the old building seemed to become a malignant presence that rose up, warning them to desist and mind their own business. Every moment the strain on the nerves increased. Out of the gloomy dining room they passed through large folding doors into a sort of library or smoking room, wrapped equally in silence, darkness, and dust, and from this they regained the hall near the top of the back stairs. Here a pitch-black tunnel opened before them into the lower regions, and, it must be confessed, they hesitated, but only for a minute. With the worst of the night still to come, it was essential to turn from nothing. Aunt Julia stumbled at the top step of the dark descent, ill lit by the flickering candle, and even Shorthouse felt at least half the decision go out of his legs. "Come on," he said peremptorily, and his voice ran on and lost itself in the dark, empty spaces below. "I'm coming," she faltered, catching his arm with unnecessary violence. They went a little unsteadily down the stone steps, a cold, damp air meeting them in the face, close and malodorous. The kitchen, into which the stairs led along a narrow passage, was large, with a lofty ceiling. Several doors opened out of it, some into cupboards with empty jars still standing on the shelves, and others into horrible little ghostly back offices, each colder and less inviting than the last. Black beetles scurried over the floor, and once, when they knocked against the deal table standing in a corner, something about the size of a cat jumped down with a rush and fled, scampering across the stone floor into the darkness. Everywhere there was a sense of recent occupation, an impression of sadness and gloom. Leaving the main kitchen, they next went toward the scullery. The door was standing ajar, and as they pushed it open to its full extent, Aunt Julia uttered a piercing scream, which she instantly tried to stifle by placing her hand over her mouth. For a second Shorthouse stood stock still, catching his breath. He felt as if his spine had suddenly become hollow, and someone had filled it with particles of ice. Facing them, directly in their way between the doorposts, stood the figure of a woman. She had disheveled hair and wildly staring eyes, and her face was terrified and white as death. She stood there motionless for the space of a single second. Then the candle flickered and she was gone, gone utterly, and the door framed nothing but empty darkness. "Only the beastly jumping candlelight," he said quickly, in a voice that sounded like someone else's and was only half under control. "Come on, Aunt, there's nothing there." He dragged her forward. With a clattering of feet and a great appearance of boldness, they went on, but over his body the skin moved as if crawling ants covered it, and he knew by the weight on his arm that he was supplying the force of locomotion for two. The scullery was cold, bare, and empty, more like a large prison cell than anything else. They went round it, tried the door into the yard, and the windows, but found them all fastened securely. His aunt moved beside him like a person in a dream. Her eyes were tightly shut, and she seemed merely to follow the pressure of his arm. Her courage filled him with amazement. At the same time he noticed that a certain odd change had come over her face, a change which somehow evaded his power of analysis. "There's nothing here, Auntie," he replied aloud quickly. "Let's go upstairs and see the rest of the house. Then we'll choose a room to wait up in." She followed him obediently, keeping close to his side, and they locked the kitchen door behind them. It was a relief to get up again. In the hall there was more light than before, for the moon had traveled a little further down the stairs. Cautiously they began to go up into the dark vault of the upper house, the boards creaking under their weight. On the first floor they found the large double drawing rooms, a search of which revealed nothing. Here also was no sign of furniture or recent occupancy, nothing but dust and neglect and shadows. They opened the big folding doors between front and back drawing rooms, and then came out again to the landing and went on upstairs. They had not gone up more than a dozen steps when they both simultaneously stopped to listen, looking into each other's eyes with a new apprehension across the flickering candle flame. From the room they had left hardly 10 seconds before came the sound of doors quietly closing. It was beyond all question. They heard the booming noise that accompanies the shutting of heavy doors, followed by the sharp catching of the latch. "We must go back and see," said Shorthouse briefly, in a low tone, and turning to go downstairs again. Somehow she managed to drag after him, her feet catching in her dress, her face livid. When they entered the front drawing room it was plain that the folding doors had been closed half a minute before. Without hesitation Shorthouse opened them. He almost expected to see someone facing him in the back room, but only darkness and cold air met him. They went through both rooms, finding nothing unusual. They tried in every way to make the doors close of themselves, but there was not wind enough even to set the candle flame flickering. The doors would not move without strong pressure. All was silent as the grave. Undeniably the rooms were utterly empty, and the house utterly still. "It's beginning," whispered a voice at his elbow, which he hardly recognized as his aunt's. He nodded acquiescence, taking out his watch to note the time. It was 15 minutes before midnight. He made the entry of exactly what had occurred in his notebook, setting the candle in its case upon the floor in order to do so. It took a moment or two to balance it safely against the wall. Aunt Julia always declared that at this moment she was not actually watching him, but had turned her head towards the inner room, where she fancied she heard something moving. But at any rate both positively agreed that there came a sound of rushing feet, heavy and very swift, and the next instant the candle was out. But to Shorthouse himself had come more than this, and he has always thanked his fortunate stars that it came to him alone, and not to his aunt too. For, as he rose from the stooping position of balancing the candle, and before it was actually extinguished, a face thrust itself forward so close to his own that he could almost have touched it with his lips. It was a face working with passion, a man's face, dark, with thick features, and angry, savage eyes. It belonged to a common man, and it was evil in its ordinary normal expression, no doubt, but as he saw it, alive with intense, aggressive emotion, it was a malignant and terrible human countenance. There was no movement of the air, nothing but the sound of rushing feet, stockinged or muffled feet, the apparition of the face, and the almost simultaneous extinguishing of the candle. In spite of himself, Shorthouse uttered a little cry, nearly losing his balance as his aunt clung to him with her whole weight in one moment of real, uncontrollable terror. She made no sound, but simply seized him bodily. Fortunately, however, she had seen nothing, but had only heard the rushing feet, for her control returned almost at once, and he was able to disentangle himself and strike a match. The shadows ran away on all sides before the glare, and his aunt stooped down and groped for the cigar case with the precious candle. Then they discovered that the candle had not been blown out at all. It had been crushed out. The wick was pressed down into the wax, which was flattened as if by some smooth, heavy instrument. How his companion so quickly overcame her terror, Shorthouse never properly understood. But his admiration for her self-control increased tenfold, and at the same time served to feed his own dying flame, for which he was undeniably grateful. Equally inexplicable to him was the evidence of physical force they had just witnessed. He at once suppressed the memory of stories he had heard of physical mediums and their dangerous phenomena, for if these were true, and either his aunt or himself was unwittingly a physical medium, it meant that they were simply aiding to focus the forces of a haunted house already charged to the brim. It was like walking with unprotected lamps among uncovered stores of gunpowder. So, with as little reflection as possible, he simply relit the candle and went up to the next floor. The arm in his trembled, it is true, and his own tread was often uncertain, but they went on with thoroughness, and after a search revealing nothing, they climbed the last flight of stairs to the top floor of all. Here they found a perfect nest of small servants' rooms, with broken pieces of furniture, dirty cane-bottomed chairs, chests of drawers, cracked mirrors, and decrepit bedsteads. The rooms had low sloping ceilings already hung here and there with cobwebs, small windows, and badly plastered walls, a depressing and dismal region which they were glad to leave behind. It was on the stroke of midnight when they entered a small room on the third floor, close to the top of the stairs, and arranged to make themselves comfortable for the remainder of their adventure. It was absolutely bare, and was said to be the room, then used as a clothes closet, into which the infuriated groom had chased his victim and finally caught her. Outside, across the narrow landing, began the stairs leading up to the floor above, and the servants' quarters where they had just searched. In spite of the chilliness of the night, there was something in the air of this room that cried for an open window. But there was more than this. Shorthouse could only describe it by saying that he felt less master of himself here than in any other part of the house. There was something that acted directly on the nerves, tiring the resolution, and feebling the will. He was conscious of this result before he had been in the room 5 minutes, and it was in the short time they stayed there that he suffered the wholesale depletion of his vital forces, which was for himself the chief horror of the whole experience. They put the candle on the floor of the cupboard, leaving the door a few inches ajar, so that there was no glare to confuse the eyes, and no shadow to shift about on walls and ceiling. Then they spread the cloak on the floor and sat down to wait, with their backs against the wall. Shorthouse was within 2 feet of the door onto the landing. His position commanded a good view of the main staircase leading down into the darkness, and also of the beginning of the servants' stairs going to the floor above. The heavy stick lay beside him, within easy reach. The moon was now high above the house. Through the open window they could see the comforting stars like friendly eyes watching in the sky. One by one the clocks of the town struck midnight, and when the sounds died away the deep silence of a windless night fell again over everything. Only the boom of the sea, far away and lugubrious, filled the air with hollow murmurs. Inside the house the silence became awful. Awful, he thought, because any minute now it might be broken by sounds portending terror. The strain of waiting told more and more severely on the nerves. They talked in whispers when they talked at all, for their voices aloud sounded queer and unnatural. A chilliness, not altogether due to the night air, invaded the room and made them cold. The influences against them, whatever these might be, were slowly robbing them of self-confidence and the power of decisive action. Their forces were on the wane, and the possibility of real fear took on a new and terrible meaning. He began to tremble for the elderly woman by his side, whose pluck could hardly save her beyond a certain extent. He heard the blood singing in his veins. It sometimes seemed so loud that he fancied it prevented his hearing properly certain other sounds that were beginning very faintly to make themselves audible in the depths of the house. Every time he fastened his attention on these sounds they instantly ceased. They certainly came no nearer, yet he could not rid himself of the idea that movement was going on somewhere in the lower regions of the house. The drawing-room floor, where the doors had been so strangely closed, seemed too near. The sounds were further off than that. He thought of the great kitchen, with the scurrying black beetles, and of the dismal little scullery, but somehow or other they did not seem to come from there either. Surely they were not outside the house. Then suddenly the truth flashed into his mind, and for the space of a minute he felt as if his blood had stopped flowing and turned to ice. The sounds were not downstairs at all. They were upstairs. Upstairs somewhere among those horrid, gloomy little servants' rooms, with their bits of broken furniture, low ceilings, and cramped windows, upstairs where the victim had first been disturbed and stalked to her death. And the moment he discovered where the sounds were, he began to hear them more clearly. It was the sound of feet moving stealthily along the passage overhead, in and out among the rooms, and past the furniture. He turned quickly to steal a glance at the motionless figure seated beside him, to note whether she had shared his discovery. The faint candlelight coming through the crack in the cupboard door threw her strongly marked face into vivid relief against the white of the wall. But it was something else that made him catch his breath and stare again. An extraordinary something had come into her face and seemed to spread over her features like a mask. It smoothed out the deep lines and drew the skin everywhere a little tighter, so that the wrinkles disappeared. It brought into the face, with the sole exception of the old eyes, an appearance of youth and almost of childhood. He stared in speechless amazement that was dangerously near to horror. It was his aunt's face indeed, but it was her face of 40 years ago, the vacant, innocent face of a girl. He had heard stories of that strange effect of terror which could wipe a human countenance clean of other emotions, obliterating all previous expressions. But he had never realized that it could be literally true, or could mean anything so simply horrible as what he now saw. The dreadful signature of overmastering fear was written plainly in that utter vacancy of the girlish face behind him. And when, feeling his intense gaze, she turned to look at him, he instinctively closed his eyes tightly to shut out the sight. Yet when he turned a minute later, his feelings well in hand, he saw to his intense relief another expression. His aunt was smiling, and though the face was deathly white, the awful veil had lifted and the normal look was returning. "Anything wrong?" was all he could think of to say at the moment, and the answer was eloquent, coming from such a woman. "I felt cold, and a little frightened," she whispered. He offered to close the window, but she seized hold of him and begged him not to leave her side, even for an instant. "It's upstairs, I know," she whispered with an odd half-laugh, "but I can't possibly go up." But Shorthouse thought otherwise, knowing that in action lay their best hope of self-control. He took the brandy flask and poured out a glass of neat spirit, stiff enough to help anybody over anything. She swallowed it with a little shiver. His only idea now was to get out of the house before her collapse became inevitable, but this could not safely be done by turning tail and running from the enemy. Inaction was no longer possible. Every minute he was growing less master of himself, and desperate aggressive measures were imperative without further delay. Moreover, the action must be taken towards the enemy, not away from it. The climax, if necessary and unavoidable, would have to be faced boldly. He could do it now, but in 10 minutes he might not have the force left to act for himself, much less for both. Upstairs the sounds were meanwhile becoming louder and closer, accompanied by occasional creaking of the boards. Someone was moving stealthily about, stumbling now and then awkwardly against the furniture. Waiting a few moments to allow the tremendous dose of spirits to produce its effect, and knowing this would last but a short time under the circumstances, Shorthouse then quietly got on his feet, saying in a determined voice, "Now, Aunt Julia, we'll go upstairs and find out what all this noise is about. You must come too. It's what we agreed." He picked up his stick and went to the cupboard for the candle. A limp form rose shakily beside him, breathing hard, and he heard a voice say very faintly something about being "ready to come." The woman's courage amazed him. It was so much greater than his own, and as they advanced, holding aloft the dripping candle, some subtle force exhaled from this trembling, white-faced old woman at his side that was the true source of his inspiration. It held something really great that shamed him and gave him the support without which he would have proved far less equal to the occasion. They crossed the dark landing, avoiding with their eyes the deep black space over the banisters. Then they began to mount the narrow staircase to meet the sounds which minute by minute grew louder and nearer. About halfway up the stairs Aunt Julia stumbled, and Shorthouse turned to catch her by the arm, and just at that moment there came a terrific crash in the servants' corridor overhead. It was immediately followed by a shrill, agonized scream that was a cry of terror and a cry for help melted into one. Before they could move aside or go down a single step, someone came rushing along the passage overhead, blundering horribly, racing madly, at full speed, 3 steps at a time, down the very staircase where they stood. The steps were light and uncertain, but close behind them sounded the heavier tread of another person, and the staircase seemed to shake. Shorthouse and his companion had just time to flatten themselves against the wall when the jumble of flying steps was upon them, and 2 persons, with the slightest possible interval between them, dashed past at full speed. It was a perfect whirlwind of sound, breaking in upon the midnight silence of the empty building. The 2 runners, pursuer and pursued, had passed clean through them where they stood, and already with a thud of the boards below had received first one, then the other. Yet they had seen absolutely nothing, not a hand or arm or face, or even a shred of flying clothing. There came a second's pause. Then the first one, the lighter of the 2, obviously the pursued one, ran with uncertain footsteps into the little room which Shorthouse and his aunt had just left. The heavier one followed. There was a sound of scuffling, gasping, and smothered screaming, and then out onto the landing came the step of a single person treading weightily. A dead silence followed for the space of half a minute, and then was heard a rushing sound through the air. It was followed by a dull, crashing thud in the depths of the house below, on the stone floor of the hall. Utter silence reigned after. Nothing moved. The flame of the candle was steady. It had been steady the whole time, and the air had been undisturbed by any movement whatsoever. Palsied with terror, Aunt Julia, without waiting for her companion, began fumbling her way downstairs. She was crying gently to herself, and when Shorthouse put his arm around her and half carried her, he felt that she was trembling like a leaf. He went into the little room and picked up the cloak from the floor, and, arm in arm, walking very slowly, without speaking a word or looking once behind them, they marched down the 3 flights into the hall. In the hall they saw nothing, but the whole way down the stairs they were conscious that someone was following them, step by step. When they went faster, it was left behind, and when they went more slowly, it caught them up. But never once did they look behind to see, and at each turning of the staircase they lowered their eyes for fear of the following horror they might see upon the stairs above. With trembling hands, Shorthouse opened the front door, and they walked out into the moonlight and drew a deep breath of the cool night air blowing in from the sea. End of The Empty House by Algernon Blackwood.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. That's LibriVox.org. Phantasmagoria by Lewis Carroll. Canto 1. The Trysting. One winter night at 9:30, cold, tired, and cross and muddy, I had come home too late to dine, and supper with cigars and wine was waiting in the study. There was a strangeness in the room, and something, white and wavy, was standing near me in the gloom. I took it for the carpet broom, left by that careless slavey. But presently the thing began to shiver and to sneeze, on which I said, "Come, come, my man, that a most inconsiderate plan, less noise there, if you please." "I've caught a cold," the thing replies, "out there upon the landing." I turned to look in some surprise, and there before my very eyes a little ghost was standing. He trembled when he caught my eye, and got behind a chair. "How came you here?" I said, "and why? I never saw a thing so shy. Come out, don't shiver there." He said, "I'll gladly tell you how, and also tell you why. But," here he gave a little bow, "you're in so bad a temper now, you'd think it all a lie. And as to being in a fright, allow me to remark that ghosts have just as good a right in every way to fear the light as men fear the dark." "No plea," said I, "can well excuse such cowardice in you, for ghosts can visit when they choose, whereas we humans can't refuse to grant the interview." He said, "A flutter of alarm is not unnatural, is it? I only feared you really meant some harm, but now I see that you are calm. Let me explain my visit. Houses are classed, I beg to state, according to the number of ghosts that they accommodate. The tenant merely counts as weight with coals and other lumber. This is a one-ghost house, and you, when you arrived last summer, may have remarked a spectre who was doing all that ghosts can do to welcome the newcomer. In villas this is always done, however cheaply rented, for though of course there's less fun when there is only room for one, ghosts have to be contented. That spectre left you on the 3rd. Since then you've not been haunted, for as he never sent us word, 'twas quite by accident we heard that anyone was wanted. A spectre has first choice by right in filling up a vacancy, then phantom, goblin, elf, and sprite. If all of these fail them, they invite the nicest ghoul that they can see. The spectre said the place was low, and that you kept bad wine, so as a phantom had to go, and I was first, of course, you know, I couldn't well decline." "No doubt," said I, "they settled on who was fittest to be sent, Yet still to choose a brat like you to haunt a man of 42 was no great compliment. "I'm not so young, sir," he replied, "as you might think. The fact is, in caverns by the waterside, and other places that I've tried, I've had a lot of practice. But I have never taken yet a strict domestic part, and in my flurry I forget the 5 good rules of etiquette we have to know by heart." My sympathies were warming fast towards the little fellow. He was so utterly aghast at having found a man at last, and looked so scared and yellow. "At least," I said, "I'm glad to find a ghost is not a dumb thing. But pray sit down. You'll feel inclined, if like myself you have not dined, to take a snack of something, though certainly you don't appear a thing to offer food to. And then I shall be glad to hear, if you will say them loud and clear, the rules that you allude to." "Thanks, you shall hear them by and by. This is a piece of luck. What may I offer you?" said I. "Well, since you are so kind, I'll try a little bit of duck. 1 slice, and may I ask you for another drop of gravy?" I sat and looked at him in awe, for certainly I never saw a thing so white and wavy. And still he seemed to grow more white, more vapory and wavier, seen in the dim and flickering light, as he proceeded to recite his maxims of behavior. Canto 2. His 5 Rules. "My first, but don't suppose," he said, "I'm setting you a riddle, is, if your victim is in bed, don't touch the curtains at his head, but take them in the middle, and wave them slowly in and out, while drawing them asunder, and in a minute's time, no doubt, he'll raise his head and look about, with eyes of wrath and wonder. And here you must on no pretence make the first observation. Wait for the victim to commence. No ghost of any common sense begins a conversation. If he should say, 'How came you here?' the way you began, sir, in such case your course is clear. 'On the bat's back, my little dear,' is the appropriate answer. If after this he says no more, you'd best perhaps curtail your exertions, go and shake the door, and then if he begins to snore, you'll know the thing's a failure. By day, if he should walk alone, at home or on a walk, you merely give a hollow groan, to indicate the kind of tone in which you mean to talk. But if you find him with his friends, the thing is rather harder. In such a case success depends on picking up some candle ends or butter in the larder. With this you make a kind of slide, it answers best with sweet, on which you must contrive to glide and swing yourself from side to side. One learns how to do it. The second tells us what is right in ceremonious calls. First burn a candle or crimson light, a thing I quite forgot tonight, then scratch the door or walls. I said, "You'll visit here no more if you attempt the guy. I'll have no bonfires on my floor, and as for scratching at the door, I'd like to see you try." The third was written to protect the interest of the victim, and tells us, as I recollect, to treat him with grave respect, and not to contradict him. "That's plain," said I, "as tear and tret to any comprehension. I only wish some ghost I've met would not so constantly forget the maxim that you mention." "Perhaps," he said, "you first transgressed the laws of hospitality. All ghosts instinctively detest the man that fails to treat his guest with proper cordiality. If you addressed a ghost as thing, or strike him with a hatchet, he is permitted by the king to drop all formal parleying, and then you're sure to catch it. The fourth prohibits trespassing where other ghosts are quartered, and those convicted of the thing, unless they're pardoned by the king, must instantly be slaughtered. That simply means be cut up small. Ghosts soon unite anew. The process scarcely hurts at all, no more than when you're what you call cut up by a review. The fifth is one you may prefer that I should quote entire. The king must be addressed as sir. This from a simple courtier is all the laws require. But should you wish to do the thing with out-and-out politeness, accost him as my goblin king, and always use in answering the phrase your royal whiteness. I'm getting rather hoarse, I fear, after so much reciting, so if you don't object, my dear, we'll try a glass of bitter beer. I think it looks inviting. Canto 3. Scaramouches. "And did you really walk," said I, "on such a wretched night? I've always fancied ghosts could fly, if not exactly in the sky, yet at a fairish height." "It's very well," said he, "for kings to soar above the earth, but phantoms often find that wings, like many other pleasant things, cost more than they are worth. Spectres, of course, are rich, and so can buy them from the elves, but we prefer to keep below. They're stupid company, you know, for any but themselves. For though they claim to be exempt from pride, they treat a phantom as if something quite beneath contempt, just as no turkey ever dreamt of noticing a bantam." "They seem too proud," said I, "to go to houses such as mine. Pray, how did they contrive to know so quickly that the place was low, and that I kept bad wine?" "Inspector Kobold came to you," the little ghost began. Here I broke in. "Inspector who?" "Inspecting ghosts is something new. Explain yourself, my man." "His name is Kobold," said my guest, "one of the spectre order. You'll very often see him dressed in a yellow gown, a crimson vest, and a nightcap with a border. He tried the Brocken business first. He caught a sort of chill, so came to England to be nursed, and here it took the form of thirst, which he complains of still. Port wine, he says, when rich and sound, warms his bones like nectar, and as the inns where it is found are his especial hunting ground, we call him the Inn Spectre. I bore it like a man, this agonizing witticism, and nothing could be sweeter than my temper till the ghost began some most provoking criticism. Cooks need not be indulged in waste, yet still you'd better teach them. Dishes have some sort of taste. Pray, why are all the cruets placed where nobody can reach them? That man of yours will never earn his living as a waiter. Is that queer thing supposed to burn? It's far too dismal a concern to call a moderator. The duck was tender, but the peas were very much too old. And just remember, if you please, the next time you have toasted cheese, don't let them send it cold. You'll find the bread improved, I think, by getting better flour, and have you anything to drink that looks a little less like ink and isn't quite so sour?" Then peering round with curious eyes, he muttered, "Goodness gracious," and so went on to criticize. "Your room's an inconvenient size. It's neither snug nor spacious. That narrow window, I expect, serves but to let the dusk in." "But please," said I, "to recollect 'twas fashioned by an architect who's pinned his faith on Ruskin." "I don't care who he was, sir, or on whom he pinned his faith. Constructed by whatever law, so poor a job I never saw, as I'm a living wraith." "What a remarkable cigar! How much are they a dozen?" I growled. "No matter what they are, you're getting as familiar as if you were my cousin. Now that's a thing I will not stand, and so I tell you flat." "Aha," said he, "we're getting grand," taking a bottle in his hand. "I'll soon arrange for that." And here he took careful aim, and gaily cried, "Here goes!" I tried to dodge it as it came, but somehow caught it all the same, exactly on my nose, and I remember nothing more than I can clearly fix, till I was sitting on the floor repeating, "2 and 5 are 4, but 5 and 2 are 6. What really passed I never learned nor guessed. I only know that when at last my sense returned, the lamp neglected dimly burned, the fire was getting low. Through driving mist I seemed to see a thing that smirked and smiled, and found that he was giving me a lesson in biography, as if I were a child. Canto 4. His Nurture. Oh, when I was a little ghost, a merry time had we, each seated on his favourite post. We chumped and chawed the buttered toast they gave us for our tea. "That story is in print," I cried. "Don't say it's not, because it's known as well as Bradshaw's Guide." The ghost uneasily replied he hardly thought it was. "It's not a nursery rhymes, and yet I almost think it is. 3 little ghostesses were set on a postesses, you know, and ate their buttered toastesses. I have the book, so if you doubt it—" I turned to search the shelf. "Don't stir," he cried, "we'll do without it." I now remember all about it. I wrote the thing myself. It came out in a monthly, or at least my agent said it did. Some literary swell who saw it seemed to think it adapted for the magazine he edited. My father was a brownie, sir. My mother was a fairy. The notion had occurred to her that children would be happier if they were taught to vary. The notion soon became a craze, and when it once begun, she brought us all out in different ways. One was a pixie, 2 were fays, another was a banshee. The fetching kelpie went to school, and gave a lot of trouble. Next came a poltergeist and ghoul, and then 2 trolls, which broke the rule, a goblin and a double. "If that's a snuff-box on the shelf," he added with a yawn, "I'll take a pinch." Next came an elf, and then a phantom, that's myself, and last a leprechaun. One day some spectres chanced to call, dressed in the usual white. I stood and watched them in the hall, and couldn't make them out at all, they seemed so strange a sight. I wondered what on earth they were. They looked all head and sack, but mother told me not to stare, and then she twitched me by the hair and punched me in the back. Since then I've often wished that I had been a spectre born, but what's the use? He heaved a sigh. They are ghost nobility, and on us they look with scorn. My phantom life was soon begun. When I was barely 6, I went out with an older one, and just at first I thought it was fun, and learned a lot of tricks. I've haunted dungeons, castles, towers, wherever I was sent. I've often sat and howled for hours, drenched to the skin with driving showers, upon a battlement. It's quite old-fashioned now to groan when you speak. This is the newest thing in tone, and here— It chilled me to the bone. He gave an awful squeak. "Perhaps," he added, "to your ear that sounds an easy thing. Try it yourself, my little dear. It took me something like a year, with constant practising. And when you've learned to squeak, my man, and caught the double sob, you're pretty much where you began. Just try and gibber if you can. That's something like a job. I've tried it, and can only say I'm sure you couldn't do it, even if you practised night and day, unless you have a turn that way, and natural ingenuity. Shakespeare, I think it is, who treats of ghosts in days of old, who gibbered in the Roman streets, dressed, if you recollect, in sheets. They must have found it cold. I've often spent £10 on stuff in dressing as a double, but though it answers as a puff, it never has effect enough to make it worth the trouble. Long bills soon quench the little thirst I had for being funny. The setting up is always worse. Such heaps of things you want at first. One must be made of money. For instance, take a haunted tower with skull, crossbones, and sheet, blue lights to burn, say, 2 an hour, condensing lens of extra power, and set of chains complete. What with the things you have to hire, the fitting on the robe, and testing all the coloured fire, the outfit of itself would tire the patience of a Job. And then they're so fastidious, the haunted house committee. I've often known them to make a fuss because a ghost was French or Russ, or even from the city. Some dialects are objected to, for one the Irish brogue is, and then for all you have to do, £1 a week they offer you, and find yourself in bogies. Canto 5. Bickerment. "Don't they consult the victims, though?" I said. "They should by rights give them a chance, because you know the taste of people differ so, especially in sprites." The phantom shook his head and smiled. "Consult them? Not a bit. 'Twould be a job to drive one wild, to satisfy one single child. There'd be no end to it." "Of course you can't leave children free," said I. to pick and choose, but in the case of men like me, I think mine host might be fairly allowed to state his views. He said, "It really wouldn't pay. Folk are so full of fancies. We visit for a single day, and whether then we go or stay depends on the circumstances. And though we don't consult mine host before the thing's arranged, still if he often quits his post, or is not a well-mannered ghost, then you can have him changed. But if the host's a man like you, I mean a man of sense, and if the house is not too new—" "Why, what has that," said I, "to do with a ghost's convenience?" "A new house does not suit, you know. It's such a job to trim it. But after 20 years or so, the wainscotings begin to go, so 20 is the limit." To trim was not a phrase I could remember having heard. "Perhaps," I said, "you'll be so good as to tell me what is understood exactly by that word." "It means the loosening all the doors," the ghost replied, and laughed. "It means the drilling by scores in all the skirting boards and floors to make a thorough draught. You'll sometimes find that one or two are all you really need, to let the wind come listening through, but here there'll be a lot to do." I faintly gasped, "Indeed!" "If I had been rather later, I'll be bound," I added, trying most unsuccessfully to smile. "You'd been busy all this while, trimming and beautifying?" "Why, no," said he. "Perhaps I should have stayed another minute, but still no ghost that's any good without any introduction would have ventured to begin it. The proper thing, as you were late, was certainly to go, but with the roads in such a state, I got the night mayor's leave to wait for half an hour or so." "Who's the night mayor?" I cried. Instead of answering my question, "Well, if you don't know that," he said, "either you never go to bed or you've a grand digestion. He goes about and sits on folk that eat too much at night. His duties are to pinch and poke and squeeze them till they nearly choke." I said, "It serves them right." "And folk who sup on things like these," he muttered, "eggs and bacon, lobster and duck and toasted cheese. If they don't get an awful squeeze, I'm very much mistaken. He is immensely fat, and so well suits the occupation. In point of fact, if you must know, we used to call him years ago the Mayor and Corporation. The day he was elected mayor, I know that every sprite meant to vote for me, but did not dare, he was so frantic with despair and furious with excitement. When it was over, for a whim, he ran to tell the king, and being the reverse of slim, a 2-mile trot was not for him a very easy thing. So to reward him for his run, as it was baking hot and he was over 20 stone, the king proceeded, half in fun, to knight him on the spot. 'Twas a great liberty to take. I fired up like a rocket. "He did it just for punning's sake. The man," says Johnson, "that would make a pun would pick a pocket." "A man," said he, "is not a king." I argued for a while, and did my best to prove the thing, the phantom merely listening with a contemptuous smile. At last, when breath and patience spent, I had recourse to smoking. "Your aim," he said, "is excellent, but when you call it an argument, of course you're only joking." Stung by his cold and snaky eye, I roused myself at length to say, "At least I do defy the veriest skeptic to deny that union is strength." "That's true enough," said he, "yet stay." I listened in all meekness. "Union is strength, I'm bound to say. In fact, the thing's as clear as day, but onions are a weakness." Canto 6. Discomfiture. As one who strives a hill to climb, who never climbed before, who finds it in a little time grow every moment less sublime, and votes the thing a bore, yet having once begun to try, dares not desert his quest, but climbing ever keeps his eye on one small hut against the sky, wherein he hopes to rest, who climbs till nerve and force are spent with many a puff and pant, who still as rises the ascent in language grows more violent, although in breath more scant, who climbing gains at length the place that crowns the upward track, and entering with unsteady pace, receives a buffet in the face that lands him on his back, and feels himself like one in sleep, glide swiftly down again, a helpless weight from steep to steep, till with a headlong giddy sweep he drops upon the plain. So I, that had resolved to bring conviction to a ghost, and found it quite a different thing from any human arguing, yet dared not quit my post, but keeping still the end in view to which I hoped to come, I strove to prove the matter true by putting everything I knew into an axiom, commencing every single phrase with therefore or because. I blindly reeled 100 ways about the syllogistic maze, unconscious where I was. Quoth he, "That's a regular claptrap, don't bluster any more. Now do be cool and take a nap, such a ridiculous old chap was never seen before. You're like a man I used to meet, who got one day so furious, in arguing the simple heat, scorched both his slippers off his feet." I said, "That's very curious." "Well, it is curious, I agree, and sounds perhaps like fibs, but still it's true as true can be, as sure your name is Tibbs," said he. I said, "My name's not Tibbs." "Not Tibbs?" he cried. His tone became a shade or two less hearty. "Why, no," said I, "my proper name is Tibbets." "Tibbets?" "Aye, the same." "Why, then, you're not the party." With that he struck the board a blow that shivered half the glasses. "Why couldn't you have told me so 3/4 of an hour ago, you prince of all the asses? To walk 4 miles through mud and rain, to spend the night in smoking, and then to find that it's in vain, and I've to do it all again, it's really too provoking." "Don't talk," he cried, as I began to mutter some excuse. "Who can have patience with a man that's got no more discretion than an idiotic goose, to keep me waiting here instead of telling me at once that this was not the house?" he said. "There, that'll do, be off to bed. Don't gape like that, you dunce. It's very fine to throw the blame on me in such a fashion. Why didn't you inquire my name the very minute that you came?" I answered in a passion. "Of course it worries you a bit to come so far on foot, but how was I to blame for it?" "Well, well," said he, "I must admit that isn't badly put, and certainly you've given me the best of wine and victual. Excuse my violence," said he, "but accidents like this, you see, they put one out a little. 'Twas my fault after all, I find. Shake hands, old turnip-top." The name was hardly to my mind, but as no doubt he meant it kind, I let the matter drop. "Good night, old turnip-top, good night. When I am gone, perhaps they'll send you some inferior sprite, who'll keep you in some constant fright, and spoil your soundest naps. Tell him you'll stand no sort of trick, then if he leers and chuckles, you'll just be handy with a stick, mind that's pretty hard and thick, and rap him on the knuckles. Then carelessly remark, 'Old coon, perhaps you're not aware that if you don't behave you'll soon be chuckling to another tune, so you'd best take care.' That's the right way to cure a sprite of such like goings on. But gracious me, it's getting light. Good night, old turnip-top, good night." Nod, and he was gone. Canto 7. Sad Souvenaunce. "What's this?" I pondered. "Have I slept, or can I have been drinking?" But soon a gentler feeling crept upon me, and I sat and wept an hour or so like winking. "No need for Bones to hurry so," I sobbed. "In fact, I doubt if it was worth his while to go. And who is Tibbs, I'd like to know, to make such work about? If Tibbs is anything like me, it's possible," I said, "he won't be over pleased to be dropped in upon at 3:30, after he's snug in bed. And if Bones plagues him anyhow, squeaking and all the rest of it, and he was doing here just now, I prophesy there'll be a row, and Tibbs will have the best of it." Then, as my tears could never bring the friendly phantom back, it seemed to me the proper thing to mix another glass and sing the following coronach. "And art thou gone, beloved ghost, best of familiars? Nay then, farewell, my duckling roast, farewell, farewell, my tea and toast, my meerschaum and cigars. The hues of life are dull and grey, the sweets of life insipid, when thou, my charmer, art away, old brick, or rather let me say, old parallelepiped." Instead of singing verse the third, I ceased abruptly rather, but After such a splendid word, I felt that it would be absurd to try it any farther. So with a yawn I went my way to seek the welcome downy, and slept and dreamed till break of day of poltergeist and fetch and fay and leprechaun and brownie. For a year I've not been visited by any kind of sprite, yet still they echo in my head those parting words so kindly said, "Old Turnip-top, good night." End of Phantasmagoria by Lewis Carroll. Read by Dorian Gray.
No worry. No worries, Reese. The story's done now. I'll send you a little hummingbird. I don't know what I'm doing with it, by the way. I just started, and I'm like, well, this might end up looking like a hummingbird when I'm done. That's my whole thought process with it. By the way, it's just maybe we'll see, and we'll see if it turns out like a hummingbird. Trying to do it like a low poly, which is what I've been doing mostly, is not highly detailed. I I will keep making it for sure. I'm trying. Excuse me. It's getting the direction of it correct, and the way the feet grow. I wanted to figured be do. That was the blah 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 blah. The um book was Phantasmagoria by Lewis Carroll. Dorian Gray was the name of the guy that read it. Excuse me, I played The Empty House by Algernon Blackwood, and there's a whole bunch of other ones. I wonder, should we listen to Laura? What do you say, honey? We'll listen to Laura while I finish the hummingbird. Sound good, guys? I think that sounds like a fine idea. Oops. Okay, dokie. Well, Reese, if you want me to play the Dorian Gray story, I could probably find it. And Laura. By Saki. Save. Okay, dokie. Open a new tab. We are going to go and add the Saki. Check out. Oh, I forgot the name of it. I forgot to name the stream right. And let's see if that'll fit. Phantasmagoria. The Empty House. And Laura. Okay. Anything, if you want something, check out, LibriVox.org. Well, check out, I just put the link in the chat, so check it out. Check it out, and we'll let me know. Like, just either message me in here or just message me on Facebook if you pick one. And we'll do it when we're done. We'll do it when we're done this book. Well, technically, I'm done the part that Josiah wanted to listen to. So I can do the rest of this book later. Okay. But yeah, have a look at LibriVox.org and see if there's anything you'd like me to play on there. Okay. Okay, we're gonna mute myself and get the other story going and see if I can get it finished.
LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Peter Eastman, July 3rd, 2006. Laura by Saki. "You are not really dying, are you?" asked Amanda. "I have the doctor's permission to live till Tuesday," said Laura. "But today is Saturday. This is serious," gasped Amanda. "I don't know about it being serious. It is certainly Saturday," said Laura. "Death is always serious," said Amanda. "I never said I was going to die. I am presumably going to leave off being Laura, but I shall go on being something. An animal of some kind, I suppose. You see, when one hasn't been very good in the life one has just lived, one reincarnates in some lower organism, and I haven't been very good when one comes to think of it. I've been petty and mean and vindictive and all that sort of thing when circumstances have seemed to warrant it." "Circumstances never warrant that sort of thing," said Amanda hastily. "If you don't mind my saying so," observed Laura, "Egbert is a circumstance that would warrant any amount of that sort of thing. You are married to him. That's different. You've sworn to love, honor, and endure him. I haven't." "I don't see what's wrong with Egbert," protested Amanda. "Oh, I dare say the wrongness has been on my part," admitted Laura dispassionately. "He has merely been the extenuating circumstance. He made a thin, peevish kind of fuss, for instance, when I took the collie puppies from the farm out for a run the other day. They chased his young broods of speckled Sussex, and drove 2 sitting hens off their nests, besides running all over the flower beds. You know how devoted he is to his poultry and garden. Anyhow, he needn't have gone on about it for the entire evening, and then have said, 'Let's say no more about it,' just when I was beginning to enjoy the discussion. That's where one of my petty vindictive revenges came in," added Laura with an unrepentant chuckle. "I turned the entire family of speckled Sussex into his seedling shed the day after the puppy episode." "How could you?" exclaimed Amanda. "It came quite easy," said Laura. "2 of the hens pretended to be laying at the time, but I was firm." "And we thought it was an accident." "You see," resumed Laura, "I really have some grounds for supposing that my next incarnation will be in a lower organism. I shall be an animal of some kind. On the other hand, I haven't been a bad sort in my way, so I think I may count on being a nice animal, something elegant and lively, with a love of fun. An otter, perhaps." "I can't imagine you as an otter," said Amanda. "Well, I don't suppose you can imagine me as an angel if it comes to that, said Laura. Amanda was silent. She couldn't. Personally, I think an otter life would be rather enjoyable, continued Laura. Salmon to eat all the year round, and the satisfaction of being able to fetch the trout in their own homes without having to wait for hours till they condescend to rise to the fly you've been dangling before them. And an elegant, svelte figure. Think of the otter-hounds, interposed Amanda. How dreadful to be hunted and harried and finally worried to death. Rather fun, with half the neighborhood looking on, and anyhow not worse than this Saturday to Tuesday business of dying by inches, and then I should go on into something else. If I had been a moderately good otter, I suppose I should get back into human shape of some sort, probably something rather primitive, a little brown, unclothed Nubian boy, I should think. I wish you would be serious, sighed Amanda. You really ought to be if you're only going to live till Tuesday. As a matter of fact, Laura died on Monday. So dreadfully upsetting, Amanda complained to her uncle-in-law, Sir Lulworth Quayne. I've asked quite a lot of people down for golf and fishing, and the rhododendrons are just looking their best. Laura always was inconsiderate, said Sir Lulworth. She was born during Goodwood week, with an ambassador staying in the house who hated babies. She had the maddest kind of ideas, said Amanda. Do you know if there was any insanity in her family? Insanity? No, I never heard of any. Her father lives in West Kensington, but I believe he's sane on all other subjects. She had an idea that she was going to be reincarnated as an otter, said Amanda. One meets with those ideas of reincarnation so frequently, even in the West, said Sir Lulworth, that one can hardly set them down as being mad. And Laura was such an unaccountable person in this life that I should not like to lay down definite rules as to what she might be doing in an after state. You think she really might have passed into some animal form? asked Amanda. She was one of those who shape their opinions rather readily from the standpoint of those around them. Just then Egbert entered the breakfast-room, wearing an air of bereavement that Laura's demise would have been insufficient in itself to account for. 4 of my speckled Sussex have been killed, he exclaimed. The very 4 that were to go to the show on Friday. One of them was dragged away and eaten right in the middle of that new carnation bed that I've been to such trouble and expense over. My best flower bed and my best fowls singled out for destruction. It almost seems as if the brute that did the deed had special knowledge how to be as devastating as possible in a short space of time. Was it a fox, do you think? asked Amanda. Sounds more like a polecat, said Sir Lulworth. No, said Egbert. There were marks of webbed feet all over the place, and we followed the tracks down to the stream at the bottom of the garden. Evidently an otter. Amanda looked quickly and furtively across at Sir Lulworth. Egbert was too agitated to eat any breakfast, and went out to superintend the strengthening of the poultry-yard defences. I think she might at least have waited till the funeral was over, said Amanda in a scandalized voice. It's her own funeral, you know, said Sir Lulworth. It's a nice point in etiquette how far one ought to show respect to one's own mortal remains. Disregard for mortuary convention was carried to further lengths next day. During the absence of the family at the funeral ceremony, the remaining survivors of the speckled Sussex were massacred. The marauders' line of retreat seemed to have embraced most of the flower beds on the lawn, but the strawberry beds in the lower garden had also suffered. I shall get the otter-hounds to come here at the earliest possible moment, said Egbert savagely. On no account! You can't dream of such a thing!" exclaimed Amanda. "I mean, it wouldn't do so soon after a funeral in the house." "It's a case of necessity," said Egbert. "Once an otter takes to that sort of thing, it won't stop." "Perhaps it will go elsewhere now there are no more fowls left," suggested Amanda. "One would think you wanted to shield the beast," said Egbert. "There's been so little water in the stream lately," objected Amanda. "It seems hardly sporting to hunt an animal when it has so little chance of taking refuge anywhere." "Good gracious!" fumed Egbert. "I'm not thinking about sport. I want to have the animal killed as soon as possible." Even Amanda's opposition weakened when during church time on the following Sunday the otter made its way into the house, raided half a salmon from the larder, and worried it into scaly fragments on the Persian rug in Egbert's studio. "We shall have it hiding under our beds and biting pieces out of our feet before long," said Egbert, and from what Amanda knew of this particular otter, she felt that the possibility was not a remote one. On the evening preceding the day fixed for the hunt, Amanda spent a solitary hour walking by the banks of the stream, making what she imagined to be hound noises. It was charitably supposed by those who overheard her performance that she was practicing for farmyard imitations at the forthcoming village entertainment. It was her friend and neighbor Aurora Burret who brought her news of the day's sport. "Pity you weren't out. We had quite a good day. We found it at once in the pool just below your garden." "Did you kill?" asked Amanda. "Rather. A fine she-otter. Your husband got rather badly bitten in trying to tail it. Poor beast, I felt quite sorry for it. It's had such a human look in its eyes when it was killed. You'll call me silly, but do you know who the look reminded me of? My dear woman, what is the matter?" When Amanda had recovered to a certain extent from her attack of nervous prostration, Egbert took her to the Nile Valley to recuperate. Change of scene speedily brought about the desired recovery of health and mental balance. The escapades of an adventurous otter in search of a variation of diet were viewed in their proper light. Amanda's normally placid temperament reasserted itself. Even a hurricane of shouted curses coming from her husband's dressing room, in her husband's voice, but hardly in his usual vocabulary, failed to disturb her serenity as she made a leisurely toilet one evening in a Cairo hotel. "What's the matter? What has happened?" she asked in amused curiosity. "The little beast has thrown all my clean shirts into the bath. Wait till I catch you, you little—" "What little beast?" asked Amanda, suppressing a desire to laugh. Egbert's language was so hopelessly inadequate to express his outraged feelings. "A little beast of a naked brown Nubian boy," spluttered Egbert. And now Amanda is seriously ill. End of Laura by Saki.
Reverse knees. Oh, I'm backwardsing them. Ah, okay, that's okay. I can unreverse them, or I can re-reverse them. Let's see. Let's see. Rotate on the Y, because I'm sure they've only got little knees. Rotate on the Y and make it smaller on the X. Extend it on the Z. and then do this, and then do that. Rotate it on the Y, and how's that? Let's get the little feeties. The feet aren't going to be perfect, but it's not meant to be perfect. Let's see. Little feeties. Okay. Now, this is size it just a little bit up. Because she's going to be sitting on a branch anyway. S, Y. Size it on the Y. I want to size it a little bit, but I don't want it to just be on the Y. There we go. And then 3. And then have it on the other side, about the same spot. Good enough for the guys I go out with. And then we're just going to move that over just a little bit so it's opposite to the other one. There. A little hummingbird with feetsies. Not exactly perfect, but and I'm gonna change my art, even though hi back. I changed my art to reflect reality, or at least semi-reality. And I have no problem doing that. I'd rather it be sort of real than not real at all. Because then it's not a hummingbird anymore. What did I do to my finger? I don't know, I didn't even know. I think that's where I knocked my knuckle a while ago. Must have scarred myself. But yeah, no, don't worry about it, Reese. You see, now that I got his feet right, I'm just not sure about them though. Maybe they need to be a little bit, because they still seem to be quite big enough. I know they'll have little feet anyway, but I want to have big enough little feet. Move it in a little, because the pictures I looked at didn't really have I couldn't see the feet. I couldn't see the feet. Let's see. I'm just gonna guess that the feet are kind of like a creamy color, I guess. Let's see. And then I'm going to make the body, cylinder projection. What the heck is that? Yeah. Oh, that's not, no, nah. You, sphere projection. Why is it doing it? I don't know what I did. Uh, there we go. There we go. A size. What color do you think? Oh, show. Um. Woohoo! Fist bump. Oh, you didn't break my heart. I just pressed a bad. Oh, there's the little feeties. Awesome, thank you. Oh, I didn't do the toes right. Ah, oh, oh, oh. That's okay. I'm all right. What color you want the hummingbird? How about a purpley one? Um, let's see. Unwrap. Smart UV project. Okay. L. Grab. Do not know why it's um L. Where is that one? Must be those right there. I don't know why it's doing a fine. Where's the UV tools? Okay. So, mark that as a seam and mark that as a seam and link it, UV unwrap it, unwrap it. Well, that's not quite what I wanted to do. Mark that as a seam. L unwrap. Smart UV project. Why does it keep coming up with parts of it? See, I've got it told where to. It shouldn't be. And 1, 2. Mark that as a seam. You. Like that is just not smart at all. That's not either. Like it should be at the seams is where it's. Ah, I see what the problem is. Mark that as a seam. The seam didn't go all the way around. Mark that as a seam. That didn't do it either. There. Oh, I swear, there's no reason why this should be doing this like this, like this, like this. L, L, no, C, no. Okay, that's a seam. It's not like I haven't gotten it to unwrap these nicely before. I have. And so why it doesn't want to do it today is beyond me. What do you think? Did I get them all? I think I got them all. I think I got them all. Mark that as the seams. U, unwrap. A, L, U, unwrap. U, smart UV project. Okay. Why doesn't it like the seams? I just, it's fine. Like, it's not like it's that big of a problem. It's really not. I just don't get it. I need to undo the see-through it part. I think it really should be going all the way through. Clear the seam. Mark the seam. U. No. A. L. A. L. U. Reset. U. Smart UV project. See, it should be marking it along the seams. It's not like it's got that many. I do not know. Well, Reese, I'm going to have to get back to you with the birdie. You. Oh, mark that as the seam. 2. Use smart UV project. Okay. Like, it shouldn't be splitting these up at all. Like, how is this even happening? It's like there's no reason for it. Okay. Fine. There we go. There we go. I don't know why it doesn't do it the same. I've never had such problems before. Because what I want to, okay, what I want to do is L. What I want to do is make it so that it was shaded, like gradient shaded for the whole bird. And so I wanted it to come up the way it should, so that all I had to do to shade it was to make it clear seam. Aha. It was to make it, clear seam. Did it clear it? It cleared it. Okay. Make it gradient, and I needed to what I wanted this to come out is one whole nice little long piece, and each one of them is a long piece, so that I could just run it up and down the color grid. Like make it smaller and run it up and down like here, and then it would be gradient. It would look very pretty. Oh, show that. Oh, no, yeah, I just wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry. I have no problem with you being a mod. Green, blue, purple works too. Awesome. And yeah, I think so. Oh, he's cute. Okay, well, I don't know how detailed I'd get on the colors of the little guy, but yeah, I got a Twitter message. You're back on Twitter. Oh. It's good to see you. I'm really on Facebook. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna stick you back on the list, and I'll tweet out and put it on Facebook when I'm done the hummingbird picture. They got little black eyes. They're so cute though. And I'll try and make a green blue one. I think he looks so cute. They all look so cute. They're like just like little shivery. Oh, I don't blame you. Hi, honey. I don't blame you for hating Twitter. I don't pay much attention to it anymore. It's some really there's been some really dumb stuff on Twitter. But of course, there is a reason why I'm on Twitter. Somebody else knows, Josiah. Awesome. Well, I will get it done so you can I will get it done and send you a picture of it for your daughter. And what I'm thinking is hopefully I can manage to get a like I'll do up him sitting on like a branch. But I'm wondering if I can make him fly, but I don't think so. I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm gonna let you guys go. My back's getting sore, and I forgot to take my pills earlier today, so it's 11 o'clock or almost 11, and I need to have something to eat so I can take my meds that I keep forgetting to take. I had a doctor's appointment today, so it went well. Doctor's appointment went well because it was the checkup for my diabetes and that. So, oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna rush. I'm gonna fix the feet though, because I'm really if they've got um if they've got 3 front toes and one back, I have to change that. I'm too neurotic to do it and leave it. And what's that? Are you saying what's that, Josiah? Am I gonna have to get Reese to go and kick your butt? I have a feeling Reese would have no problem would have no problem going to kick your butt. Did it? Oh, that is so good to hear, Reese. I am so happy. Um, my doctor gave me some more meds, and she's hoping I get to see the arthritis specialist soon. I showed her my desk set up, and she's like, "Wow, that's awesome, and you're a handy woman too." I'm like, "Yep," because of course I built my desk that I'm sitting on, so or I'm sitting on my bed, but I built the desk that it's and that's really good to hear, Reese. I'm very happy. It's I'm very happy about that. But yeah, I'll definitely finish up and show you so you can show your daughter. 'Cause that just gives me something to holy cow, I'm tired, but I'm gonna let you guys go. Are they? Yay! That's very awesome. Any um any good news is awesome. Any little bit of good news is awesome. I'm very happy for you. That's so awesome. I'm glad you got some good news. You need some good news. And if you do, if send me a link of the debatey thing, and if you did the debate, send me a link to it, and I'll have a like if it's a is it a live debate or is it a thinking about that. Excuse me. Did you see Aaron Ross? Did you see did you see Aaron Ross debate? Huh? The one last night? It's on non-sec. You have to watch it. If you didn't watch it, you have to watch it. Oh, it was in, and Ho Josiah, honey, who was on? Hovine was talking to um Sygard on Modern Day Debate. It was live. Oh, good. Well, yeah, I still have the link. It was it was oh, it was live, not it was it streaming? Oh, good. Yeah, it's pretty Sygart. That's the name. Thank you, honey. Um, but anyway, I'm gonna let you go because I'm getting tired and I need to take my pills. So, oh yeah, Hovine and Sygart. Yeah, that was something. And then Aaron Raw and some other fellow um Sygart came in on Non-Sex channel. It was really good too. It was really face palming, but I'm gonna quit here. So I love you guys, and I'm so happy for you, Reese. And and I will talk to you guys later. Love you guys. Bye.